Hi, I'm Laura. I'm a Capsule PM and a former IBM PM, and in this Exponent Expert Answer video, I'll be answering the PM interview question, tell me about a time when you had to make a decision to make a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. Let me tell you about a time when I had to push back a launch to make a short-term sacrifice for long-term gains. I was working on a product, preparing for a launch in North America only, when I was told that the launch would have to include Europe as well within the same time frame. Knowing the complexity in globalization, you have to think about languages and translations, you have to think about laws and regulations, you have to think about currencies. I knew right off the bat that there was no way that we could make this time frame work. I needed to talk to my head of sales to get to the bottom of what was at the heart of this change of request in order to better understand how to move forward. So I set up time to talk with the head of sales, and in parallel, I set up time to talk with my tech lead in order to scope the additional work, so I would have a realistic time frame in mind. In speaking with the head of sales, I uncovered that there was a potential client in Europe with additional budget for Q3 that they wanted to spend and put towards our product. This would also help us because it would help us better hit our own revenue targets for the quarter. However, I knew that there was no way to be able to fit in all the additional work in order to be able to create a good user experience for this European potential client, and I did not want to rush the launch at their expense. So I asked to speak directly with the client, where I told them that while we wouldn't be able to meet this deadline for them, I was able to give them the newly scoped launch date that would happen in the following quarter so that they could budget accordingly. As a result, the client was appreciative that I was upfront and honest with them and willing to meet with them. And because I was so quick in my response to them, they were able to change some things around and allocate accordingly so that they could become a happy customer of our product starting in Q4. So while it was at the expense of some revenue towards our targets in Q3, I knew that building a trusting, long-lasting relationship with the customer was more important and well worth the sacrifice in revenue at the time. Thanks for watching. Now we'll reflect a bit on what worked with this interview question and some tips. So this is a very classic product management behavioral interview question. And if you didn't notice, I used a framework to structure my answer. It was the STAR framework, which is situation, task, action, result. And I like using this framework because it just helps me structure my thinking. If you'll notice, I wasn't super obvious about it. I didn't spell out, this is the situation, this was the action that I took. It's much better if you're subtle about it and you use it as a framework to structure your own thinking internally, but by not pointing it out and setting it up like you're checking things off a checklist, the answer flows much more organically and it's much more comfortable, feels a lot more conversational with the interviewer. One other tip that I have when answering these types of behavioral interview questions is to come prepared. This particular example that I used with this, having to push back a launch date, I could have used to answer a number of other behavioral interview questions, like tell me about a time when you overcame a challenge, or tell me about a time when you had to miss a deadline. What's great about having these examples in your back pocket is that you will never be found off kilter if you're asked a question that you've never heard before. So as with all things, preparation is key. Make sure that you have some ideas in mind beforehand, because the last thing that you want is to show up to an interview or be asked a question and have no idea how to respond. Preparation gives you confidence, which makes your interviewer feel at ease as well, and everything just flows much more naturally. Thanks for watching this Exponent Expert Answer video, and good luck with your upcoming interview.